Our first Techie Talk of August 2023 with State Representative Techie Chan of Quincy. Hey, Techie, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Joe. Happy one left of like the third of the summer remaining, I suppose.
I know it's kind of sad. I was just speaking to a weather observer at the Blue Hill Weather Observatory, and he said, "Oh, well, welcome to the last meteorological month of summer." I'm like, "Oh, great."
Yeah, well, considering that we spent basically 2 months in high humidity and constant rainstorms and thunderstorms and wind and lightning, now we have our first dry kind of summer month that we should have seen back in June.
I know it's crazy, but I'm hoping it'll extend like into November this year.
I'm at that stage too. August historically is this, wet and warm month, which is fine. I mean, you live here long enough, you live here your life, you accept that August is kind of damp, the more damp and more intense heat, going to late July to early August, and it tapers off, mid-September, and we move to like this, fall, summer, fall summer-ish like weather, which is nice going to November, as you point out. I would do this for a while. On the flip side, I hope the local reservoirs and the Quabbin and other water supplies is healthy. The snowpack this past winter was not that great. A lot of our reservoirs already depend on good sized snowpack. So crossing my fingers that this wetter summer fills up the reservoirs, I hope.
Yes. There's actually, we're recording this on a Thursday. That's when the state updates its drought monitor. And I checked it, and there is zero drought anywhere in Massachusetts. It's all above normal.
Yeah, that's the first time in a long time I can think of that, there isn't a drought issue. And hopefully the damp weather will tamper down forest fires. I remember early in March, there was a lot more forest fires because of such a dry winter.
That's true. Yeah, hopefully it's helping out up in Canada as well. I don't know if they're having the same wet issues that we are.
Well, it's amazing how the news cycle works. I mean, once the air cleared, we stopped hearing about the Canadian forest fires.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't just go out.
I'm pretty confident in just go either, which is an unfortunate statement, but true.
Yeah.
But it's not just here. I mean, globally speaking, the Northern Hemisphere is taking a pounding on heat. And of course, it triggers forest fires even in a very dry area. So unfortunately, we already have enough climate change issues that are man-made, but you throw in naturally made climate change issues such as forest fires, it just compounds the matter. And of course, eats resources, right? It puts stress on, electrical grids in terms of, cooling buildings, but also in the water supply, as firefighters are battling fires, and you have to obviously eat up fuel and get those helicopters up there. And you saw the tragedy of in Greece. Most of the islands of Greece on fire, tourists are trapped, and you had like one person die already, another one regarding an airplane, fire retardant airplane slammed into a hill.
Yeah. So it's obviously it's not good, and we want to get past it, certainly. But good news is in Quincy, I've been checking the beach water quality this summer, and it's really been very good. There's been no closures.
I'm a little surprised because when it's heavy rains, it wash like all the soot and bacteria and everything out into the bay, and the bay is shallow, and that's obviously a problem because it doesn't flush out properly. And I remember earlier in the summer when the heavier rains, they didn't have closures, but they had higher counts of bacteria and put the flags up on warnings, but they didn't have any extended closures in Quincy Bay. So that is good news. So perhaps the rain, like early on, flushed out all the initial bacteria and other microbes that are sitting naturally, in Town Brook and Furnace Brook and the Black Streak Estuary and all the drains that go around the city. And people are picking up after dog waste, which is very crucial because the dog waste heavily pollutes the bay. And that's why you don't pour dog waste or any other chemicals or liquids in any of the drains in Quincy. They all go straight to the brook system or go straight down into the beach if it's not directed to the brook directly. So obviously you guys all know I live at the Black Creek Estuary, like is my front yard. I grew up in front of Black Creek on across the street. So we do see the various tides and smells and whatnot, and the impact on nature. And I saw blue herring last week.
Neat. That's
Yeah,
quite a neat sight. Yeah.
it was because I thought it was a small kid of a cat initially.
So
Yeah,
that's yeah, usually that's you see that's reserved for places down the Cape, more remote areas. So that's neat to see.
it actually is because I was driving home and I looked out the window and like, is that a small kid of a cat? Because it was not up, it was hunched down. So it wasn't like fully stretched out. It was kind of like doing the whole like this type of thing,
Yeah.
hunched shoulders and his head down and the long beak. I'm like it was like 3 feet tall. I'm like, is that a child? So I took a stop, rolled out the window, took a better look. I'm like, oh, it's a herring. So
Yeah. And once they take off, then you really know what it is because their wingspan is so huge.
oh yeah, they got to 6 foot high at full adult level and up to massive wingspan. So I mean, I grabbed my mom, we went out. He didn't care. The bird just chilling, biggest bird in the marsh. No one's gonna bother it.
That's right.
So, just hanging out. I mean, even the egrets, which are more common than ever. I love seeing the white egrets here. I don't, and they're beautiful birds, and they just kept distance from the heron for whatever reason. The heron's just like dominating the piece of marshland for a little while. So, yeah, I mean that's also part of it as well. I mean, nature will kind of heal itself the best it can as long as we try not to do more damage to it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, that's a big part of living by a marsh. Although mosquitoes have been quite a bit of mosquitoes this year.
Yep. It's well, they have plenty of moisture, so unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm also giving my West Nile warning now. Suffolk County did find a case of West Nile virus, everyone, since that's Suffolk County. It isn't like it's that far from here. So definitely please empty still water near your area. It does take about a week or two for mosquito eggs to incubate, but why wait that long? So if you got any still water, definitely please empty it around your house and please be more cautious in the eat dusk in the evening if you're going out for walks regarding try and avoid mosquito repellent and whatnot. Obviously, if you're kind of in a dense urban area. And if you're out at night, I definitely enjoy the evenings, but get your Citrella candles out or get that fire pit going to try to swear away mosquitoes. And if there's a good breeze, mosquitoes have a hard time, getting to if the breeze is strong enough. So if you're going to go for a walk and we're back in nice nights for now, it might be a good time to get out. But, more rain's coming this weekend, looks like, and it'll be more still water. But yeah, West Nile virus is detected in Suffolk County, which does impact us. And the symptoms take 2 to 14 days. Yeah, I've been reading, guys. 2 to 14 days to appear. They can include numbness, fever, convulsions, a whole lot of other ailments that look like flu, but it's a lot more than flu, especially things like numbness and paralysis. A lot of muscular issues. And it takes 2 or 4 days after the initial bite mosquito. And the disease comes from predominantly birds. Mosquitoes bite birds, get up. I mean, mosquito bites birds, mosquito bites us, transmits the virus.
Yep, yep. So best not to get bitten at all in the first place. Hey, Techie, there's a state budget in place.
Yeah, we did not go into September with no state budget. As I've talked about in the past, we have enough money to kind of do over the budgets, and the governor did a 1/12 budget for the month of August, which won't be necessary. It'll be just 10 days in, and they'll do the reconciliation. The comptroller will do the reconciliation, so it all works out in the end. And the budget is pretty exciting. I mean, one of the biggest things in there we've talked a lot about, universal school breakfast and school. I'm sorry, yeah, breakfast and lunches. Yeah, universal school
meals, basically.
Basically, yeah. We're that's what happens to do this too often. Yeah, no, this universal school meals in schools. Yeah, that was the big push by the members of the legislature and the public and healthcare advocates and educators. And this was the big priority. And it was a pandemic program, another pandemic program to made permanent. So to us, that's the real big highlight in this year's budget. Beyond obviously we got a lot of money for local projects like the presidential library proposal. We got some money for QCAP, Bridge Resources, and Germantown Neighborhood Center, and so overtime patrol money for Crenshaw Drive and Furnish Brook Parkway with state police increasing patrols as we hit into in the warmer months. So we want more police presence, and working with Bruce and Rushuti Drive on some monies to create a new traffic portable, like there's like a portable traffic light system, and the state and the city will have to work together to figure out how the configuration would work regarding trying to slow down and make some more sense of the traffic or shooty. Obviously the ferry service very important to everyone up in Swan Point Park. Bruce and John's been working pretty hard and making sure funding continues for that program through the summer with the closure of Sumner Tunnel, and maybe it's the better alternative to try to get to Long's Wharf, to get to South Station, and other ways to get to the airport. So the ferry service becomes really important right now. We got some money for the Multicultural Festival and a few neighborhood groups in Quincy Point. Some money for Faxon Park. Obviously that's very important to Speaker. Maybe a little smattering of money all over the place in the city.
Does the budget allocate money from the new quote millionaires tax?
We do. We allocate about $500 million to both transportation and educational programs. There is no stipulation in this millionaires tax of how we spend it, along as it falls in the category we consider education, transportation. So, for example, the governor proposal on a pilot program for universal community college tuition, targeting specifically persons age 25 and above, obviously finish high school /GED program. We've got piling that out for about $20 million, for example, out of the millionaires tax. This is an easy example. And other examples, including, trying to help out the MBTA a little bit here regarding safety upgrades and hiring, trying to hire people, so there's a smattering of money, across the state on different ends of the programs, like regional transportation stuff. We don't care in Quincy, we're MBTA, right? So, but if you're, Worcester West, you care about regional transportation authority. So, that's another example of using, millionaires tax, really just not on our neighborhoods per se, exactly, but, in the bigger picture statewide. We've been very conservative money. We only estimated $1 billion. These are programs that are generally outside the state budget-based programs. These are kind of like extras, so to speak. We don't know what the projection really is because a lot of things have been happening with the economy. So we took the conservative approach, and we don't want to bake it into baseline budget programs because we'll have to cut them. So these are more supplemental things.
One thing that was not included, though, was the tax cut package.
No, we didn't touch really the so-called 62F, Chapter 62F issue. That got left at the table as part of the budget process. Maybe we'll revisit the issue down the road. The initial House proposal, was to provide equal distribution of 62F funds to everyone at proportional to the amount of taxes you pay. For most of us in Quincy, that's actually a plus. We don't live in a super wealthy region of the state. So you're not like Wellesley, I guess, is considered a super wealthy area. They pay a higher tax burden on income taxes. And, they received the greatest benefit. Those residents there give the greatest benefit of 62F because it's proportional taxes you pay. So the more you pay, the more you get back. So if you pay a significantly lower tax burden, you don't get nearly as much back. So, the House was trying to do everybody should get an equal share of the profit, so to speak, as a taxpayer to Commonwealth, not just what you put in. So, maybe revisit the issue down the road. Obviously the Senate was not interested in pursuing those matters, but I thought it was pretty fair, and obviously it benefits my residents heavily, because people should share the tax burden of Commonwealth. But 60F is definitely not pro middle income and low income folks.
Yeah, I read too the state lottery had its most profitable year ever since it was started.
Yeah, I saw the same news report. Over $6 billion or so. $1.2 billion is going straight to cities and towns for local aid, which means the budget local aid numbers were adjusted to reflect that as it came out of conference committee. Administrative cost is actually fairly low. When you think about it, it's 5% of each ticket that's sold at the convenience stores, plus a little bonus if they get a winning ticket. And state lottery administration is generally less than 2% of total cost. So you figure 5%, 6 billion goes to, your convenience stores and gas stations and supermarkets, and the bars and other places that provide lottery sales, whether it be Keno tickets or scratchies. And then, administrative budget's like under 2%. So you're looking like maybe around like with the bonuses to the convenience stores and supermarkets that they win and the bars, if they have a winning player, we're talking maybe, maybe 700% ish.
Mm.
That is like a bargain
Mhm.
when you think about it, on total administrative costs on a program that's $6 billion, and you have like thousands of lottery agents and auditing and all that stuff. So, lottery, we're one of the most successful lotteries, top 5-ish in the country. Definitely the best per capita. 7 million people against $6 billion. I mean, even, discount some of the cross state lines, folks in the borders. I mean, that's kind of crazy, actually, when you think about it, on a per capita basis. And 1.2 billion in profits is one of the best ratio benefits in the state. That means that, the remainder went to prizes, right? Sheer cost and prizes. So about, probably $4 million in prizes. And this is the crazy part too. Scratchies still represent 4 billion out of $6 billion in sales. Your gut instinct would tell you it's the Mega Millions and Powerball that, 1.25 billion is coming up in Friday.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Again, not encouraging gambling, folks. Not encouraging gambling.
Oh, right. No. Yeah.
But scratchies still represent, 4 out of 6 billion in sales, and it's a really uniquely New England thing. I've studied lotteries around the country, and scratchies don't even crack 20% in most states. Here it's 40 out of 60 billion. That's well past 60%.
Yeah. I think it's because of the instant gratification. You find out right then and there if you want or not.
I agree. Yeah, and it's also a cultural issue. I mean, everybody grew up on some form of scratchy or pull tab before scratchies in the state, what a pull tab is. And you also have, people giving away for Christmas, people give away for birthday, give it away for, lottery prize, pooled raffles. It's like a pretty affordable way. You give somebody, a $2 scratchy, maybe they come out with like $1 million or at least maybe 20. So.
Yes, and then you wish you had it.
Well, I always wondered about that. If you gave your kid a scratchy and it's like $5,000, I mean, I'm sure you're happy for your kid, but you're like, I spent $2 for my kid, and this is what happens, right? I never heard that story yet of someone gives a scratchy and they're like, why? Why did they do that moment, right?
I know.
You never hear those stories.
Well, it's the risk you take, right?
Well, I mean, it's not like you see, a news program about my kid won $1 million. It could have been mine, right? Or
That's right. One thing that wasn't in the budget too was online lottery, right? That didn't make it.
No, this was a interesting issue between House Senate Conference Committee. As you guys may be aware, I mean, there's a whole lot of the give and take between the House and Senate on the budget negotiation process. That includes all the policy issues in the outside section. And, I have suspected, as well as leadership team, that the Senate, doesn't want to do more expanded gambling, which includes online lottery, and, gives us the ability to kind of test the waters about, are they really serious about online lottery, so to speak, as the leadership team has those conversations with the Senate. So, we've done this to the Econ Dev bill last time out. You guys know my feelings about it, not wicked warm to it, but I do think it's inevitable. As I said earlier, our partners in convenience stores and supermarkets and bars and many other places that are lottery providers, will be impacted by online lottery. And I'm not always convinced that things are transferable. Well, that 27-year-old play online lottery versus betting on the Red Sox, right? I think is a huge cultural issue too. But that being said, $6 billion in record sales. I don't know how else to frame that answer. So, but it is going to be inevitable. I mean, it's just the nature of technology, entertainment, and a changing society. The government's going to have to, on these type of entertainment products, going to have to change too.
Yeah, so a portion of it, obviously, they mentioned scratch tickets. Those will probably still be in person, and maybe some other games too. So it'll be a combination, I think.
Agreed, but I mean, if the online lottery proposal includes a scratchy simulation. It's kind of sort of simulates maybe a slot machine-ish type thing on your phone. Does that really translate to long-term players? I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
As much as People don't like the litter of scratch tickets, and you're blowing off that weird grayish thing you get a queen to scratch off, which I still don't actually know what the material is. Does that have the same effect, right? And I couldn't tell you. The online marketplace is very, very competitive, not just on gambling, but on your micro games, on commercial transactions, making reservations or booking trips on your phone. I mean, these are big deals for these apps. And it's not as, like Candy Crush, I buy, $2.99 microtransactions. I mean, Expedia rather use their app too, and because they try to create more convenience for consumers to use their products. So
Yeah.
it's removing that world and the feeling from the Treasury and others in the legislature that we got to move the lottery to the 21st century, just like everything else.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's the whole issue of, how do you keep it out of the hands of minors?
Yeah, that's a legit question, right? It's the same issue I have regarding takeout alcohol, delivery alcohol services, right? How to keep it out of the hands of minors. And, there's obviously a degree of parental supervision, but, there are places to, protect. For example, you get a driver's license. We have driver's licenses. It has your birthday and it's a verification of age, right? No different as getting carded in a restaurant, or hopefully alcohol delivery shows up at your door and somebody checks for an adult. Again, I'm very skeptical that's happening, as you can tell from the sound of my voice as the alcohol oversight guy. But there are those mechanisms, and they've gotten wiser about VPNs, virtual protocol networks. So these app developers, are able to, identify that you are using a VPN and also prevent you from accessing their system so it doesn't violate state law.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of unanswered questions still to be resolved before that happens, I think.
I agree with you, but it has been rolled out in other countries or other states, so it isn't as if this is a brand new shiny product. But they are customized. Every state, every country is different. It's not one size fit all, and whatever the lottery is thinking, the Treasury is thinking, will have to reflect the economic system we're working under. You can't just decide, I'm going to look like Michigan, and then that's it. It doesn't quite work that way.
We talk about local issue, Techie. What you're well aware of is the state's opening of a welcome center at Eastern Nazarene College.
Yeah, I got to go make a visit, see the folks over there. For those who aren't aware, I live about 15-minute, 20-minute walk from Eastern Nazarene College. If you walk fast, you're probably 15 minutes. If you're slow like me, it takes a little longer. But yeah, I grew up here, as you all know, and it's not like I have not been to the Naz when I was a kid, whether biking, walking, or meeting up with friends, right? So, as you all know, universities are having a lot of challenges globally with the declining birth rate and the rising tuition. So, the Naz is no exception to that rule. And many people would not be aware they do have apartments on campus. I've had friends who went to school there and used the apartments, particularly for grad school. And, they're kind of furnished apartments, and people have been using it for decades and nobody's the wiser. So obviously the Eastern Naz is looking for some extra revenue, and they've been working with the state on converting these apartments to higher standard, to have more permanent, temporary / permanent, depending on how you want to frame it, long-term housing for migrants. The state is a refugee state. People always forget that. And we do get Haitians, Afghans are coming here, as well as people from South America fleeing, basically being murdered, raped, or put into slave gangs, so to speak. Really dictator governments too, where everything's out of control. So it isn't like they're running from Cambridge to Quincy, right? They're coming from bad situations. You guys know about the Afghan situation, hopefully, longtime U.S. ally folks that, we need to get out. I mean, you helped us, we should help you. I'm not complicated. Haitian, well, you all read the news. Haiti's always something unfortunately happening in that country. But, we also get, migrants from around the world, right? Ukrainians are coming in big time, right? The Russians are seeking asylum here, right? Chinese seek asylum, religious persecution. we've accepted a lot of them here. We have Cambodian population, or Vietnamese population. Those are two populations I point out, are refugee populations. And the Nepalese also refugee population, because an earthquake basically flattened a section of the country. Were put here in temporary refugee status as we're trying to solve what they're going to do. So people act like this is a novelty. It really isn't. The state has been, the city has been, and the city's been always very welcoming to folks that are in need. And I see no reason not to change.
Do you think the state should do a better job, though, of communicating with communities about their plans for these welcome centers?
Well, let me frame the question this way, right? I mean, I did get some notice that they were coming up several weeks ago. My understanding, they also try to communicate with City Hall about this stuff. But, let's frame it this way. If Eastern Nazarene on its own, without the state, decides to bring in folks from, let's say, hurricane region that are doing missionary work and need housing, and just transport them up there on their own, put them in the residency there. And let's say it's Oklahoma. Let's make it better state. Oklahoma, tornado ridden, missionaries go out, and other help centers to bring them to Massachusetts as a place to shelter and do what not essentially domestic refugees. What's the problem with that? Right.
As you know, the mayor's concerned about the potential impact on the public schools. If there are an influx of new children, would the state reimburse the city for that?
Same thing I just said, right? If you go out and get some folks from, let's say, a weather-torn area in the Midwest and bring them all here, would we be having this conversation? Yeah. I mean, again, I believe this is a helpful city. The people here are very generous, but it's about how you frame the argument. And you can argue, well, the state brought them. All right. Well, what if a private entity brought them? Any real difference? Not. Any impact? Same. Yeah. The difference is the government's involved in this one, but the city would be facing the same situation in both scenarios.
Right. So does the state work with these communities to help pay for those costs?
Well, unlike the first scenario regarding the ENC moving on their own, for example, if they do that and private folks, it's this scenario, there is federal funding that, on refugee placement. And we put up $20 million last year, and I think we put up $80 million in a sub-budget this year to help to transition to supplement federal funding. And the state's always had, as part of our budget, what we call pothole funding. So if you have a family that moves from one place to another in a school district and you didn't have that as part of your Chapter 70 calculation, it's a pothole. And then we put money set aside to provide that fill. Given the fact that these folks are coming in the summertime prior to school year begins, it's better than showing up in January.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they can, a lot of the pupil calculation will come into play, and the state and federal funds will kick in. And I also remind folks, you got your almost $9 million more in Chapter 70 funding this fiscal cycle as part of education reform. So, I mean, I think, I'm trying to remember the numbers now off the top of my head, but I think it was like a 20% bump from the original Chapter 70 formula. So, and that doesn't count, as we talk about, school meals, transportation assistance, for most special education and regional school districts, a bunch of other grant programs ranging from school building assistance grants to ARPA money, regarding things like better ventilation, air filters, right? And, we help pay for school nurses as well. So, I mean, we're a big partner, in the funding of your schools. The city operates them all, but the money came from somewhere, right? So it's not just your property taxes providing that funding. So, the state and the feds, put up money for, transition assistance for all these migrants. And, I suspect that it ain't gonna be hard for us to continue to do that. We still have a few bucks left, and we're not going to rely entirely on federal money. That's unreasonable. I hope that the city recognizes the same commitment that we've made on the state and federal level, and also participate in helping out. And again, I'd say again, this is a very generous city. We're a very careful, loving city. So I see no reason why this cannot be resolved.
Yeah,
Also,
I mean,
folks,
I'm
One of the
sorry?
things some folks, Manatee Community Health Center has been out there,
Mm.
Bay State Community Services, a myriad of our local social agencies, are helping at the Welcoming Center, as well as, things like health screenings and whatnot, associated with, helping these folks out. So, if our human service agencies, aren't exactly paying extra for this assistance, and they're out there, working right now to do it.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, as you know, the biggest, I guess, question I've heard from folks is the communication aspect of it, that they felt it was sprung upon them.
Well, that's fair. I mean, but I say, it was a private entity doing it. It wasn't government. Just saying. I think you know where I'm going with this, guys. If I have to spell it out any further, I don't. I don't really need to, right? So, I mean, obviously, it'd be great if there was better communication. But did anyone communicate to the neighborhood if they're going to bring in 27 families for graduate school at ENC? Yeah. When you frame it that way, right? Because we're not talking about new housing, which I know there's a lot of constituent angst about development. This ain't new housing. This is existing housing that has been used for decades in our neighborhood that sometimes include families that are at an ENC. Just saying, folks, right?
So, and just to let folks know, the vice president of ENC has agreed to do an interview with me next week. So we'll get to know a little bit more about what's going on there too.
Well, you can ask them, did they notify people when they have an influx of families, so people going to school there? Did they inform the city of a massive influx of families that are going to go to school there? I mean, people. I just don't get it. It's
Well, I mean, the difference is they're not going to school there; they're living there. So I think that's
the school. You can talk to the NC guys. I mean, there are people that are families. I remember campaigning years ago, walking onto the campus and meeting families that actually lived on the campus and they had children. I mean, we were talking about July 4th fireworks and where they could go to see them with their young kids. And I was like, what are you doing here? Grad school? Oh, yeah, where you living in departments at ENC? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Those are there. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong here.
Well, because people didn't know, Jackie. I don't think people understood that there were apartments there.
I get that, but did they know they had all those young families before?
Probably not.
Exactly. You made my point for me.
So that's why there's questions now, because people didn't know. When people don't know, they ask questions.
Agreed. And that's perfectly fine. But to treat this as some abnormality regarding existing housing and existing neighborhood being used, come on, folks. Right? You all can figure this out on your own. So I agree. I mean, it'd be nice if we had better communication, but I did get some advance notice. I wasn't completely blindsided. But at the same time, though, again, this is existing housing that has been used by families before. I know. I visited them.
Right. But most people didn't. So now they do.
So the question to ask ENC and want to ask city government, should ENC inform the neighbors in the mayor every time a whole bunch of folks come in for any time of extended stay with their families at ENC? Or should they be required to do that? They haven't been required to do that forever. You see where I'm going here.
No, obviously it's a private entity. So
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the same question, right? If you have a question about the impact regarding utilization of those apartments. So can the city tell us, and can the ENC tell us how many families were there to impact the school system when, they had more families that lived on campus, in the past? And you talk about today, but I mean, it's existing housing that was used for young couples and families.
Right. The difference here is the state's involved this time. That's
no, it's not. That's the difference. But in terms of usage and impact, yeah, exactly, right. Either the government involvement versus private involvement versus existing housing. Yeah, I know there's a government involvement. And was the impact of a non-government involvement?
No, same impact, right?
It would have the same impact, right?
Right.
So the states, it's easy because you want to beat up on the state, or people have questions state, and that's perfect fair to do, both beating us up and asking questions. That's not a problem. But there's some illusion here that this is a novelty in the neighborhood. I'm just telling you, it ain't. And the city's always managed this in the past. The difference here is the human services are much more involved, as part of this transition process, and the state's much more involved in trying to transition these folks quickly, into the workforce, which there's a shortage of, and move on to more permanent housing elsewhere. That's the difference, right? But if there was 20 families, at ENC, for example, a dozen years ago that impacted the school system because it showed up for school in September, which, same issue.
Right. I'm just saying it's people weren't aware. Now they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And should have been aware 20 years ago when ENC had those apartments.
Well, I'll ask them.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something you ask the residents too, right? Should they have a community meeting every single time those apartments are filled by ENC? Should have had one for the last 20 plus years. Should have been every year a community meeting about ENC's impact on the school system. Maybe there was no kids that year. Maybe it's strictly just young couples, but maybe they should tell everybody it was only be young couples or young singles. Or maybe, that it had an abnormal year and they had, a policy they allowed to have people bring their young families with them for a year of school. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question to ask the VP of ENC. And like I said, I mean, time changes and people change and things keep changing over there. And I mean, it ain't new, the apartments, right? And the impact on it, regardless of what decade we're talking about, what year we're talking about, it had variable effects in the city depending on what was going on in there. So, I mean, same thing moving in, people to go to school. I mean, where I live next to us is no longer young families, growing up there. It's a lot of to stay here. A lot of families go to school in ENC, come and go back and forth, like I said, 20-minute walk to school. And there's other rentals in the area, as you all know. They have families. So you're going to start checking every ENC graduate student in a neighborhood now that brings their kids.
I'm not suggesting that, Tacky. I'm just asking questions.
I know, and I'm suggesting some scenarios that are legitimate, that people, give some consideration to, right? I mean, I'm providing a different point of view for you all is what I'm doing. Because I think people get locked in, right, very quickly on, the state did this, they did that. Fair, I'm not going to disagree with that. But, let's think this through all the way, right? And let's people get hyper focused on this migrant thing, right? There's in the school. Well, let's bring this to a larger thought process and give you some alternative ways of thinking the same issue, but a different way. Like I said, I mean, if there's an influx of students in a neighborhood and they have families, and let's say there's 100 of them and they rent in the area around you where you live in the area. Same impact, right? And, perhaps they were replacing folks that were seniors, which is actually very true in my neighborhood, right? I live in an area where a lot of folks are selling their homes who are older. There's no less than 6 families, on the corner in 3 years, and I see young kids, right? So, we'll figure it out. City's a good city, people are good people, and we'll figure it out as we go along.
All right, we will see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I'm giving you another way to look at something.
The MBTA has a new contract with their union.
Yeah, very generous. No surprise. Labor is short. Nobody likes to work at the T. I can't believe I used those words.
No,
yeah,
20 years ago you wouldn't.
20 years most definitely wouldn't. Where you're getting calls, can't get make a kid a job at the T, right? I mean, it was like a reoccurring theme. Nowadays, big signing bonuses and trying to put employment in people, and they're struggling. And the union contract's most generous union contract in like 25 years. I'm not surprised. There's a labor shortage. There's no incentive for people to stick longer than they need to. and they have incentivized workers to stay, and they incentivized workers to come. And a lot of stuff you've seen in the press regarding the signing bonuses and other things, in terms of packages, are codified in their collective bargaining agreement. Not surprised by that either. So it's a reflection of the current labor market, and the struggles we've talked about basically all year about the T and its labor shortages, and it shows.
You think it'll work?
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, unemployment in general is still floating at a 3% zone. There's no more expanded government benefits from pandemic, and no expanded unemployment. So, and hyperinflation. So either you're cutting back huge, trying to live on government benefits because inflation's, was at 9%, we're down to 3%, but core inflation still over 4%. People are working with more money and wages, but you're still going to try to find the best paying job possible right now.
Yeah, that my thought was maybe they should look to public transportation systems in other places in the country to lure them here.
Perhaps. I mean, that's how we got the current general manager, try to lure better talent here. But it's a nationwide labor shortage to begin with. And, when I did the visit with Congressman Lynch and Senator Keenan, on the rails, Quincy Adams, I mean, they already took some people from Coriolis. So, the project manager there, actually, the T already stole from Coriolis, which is the private contractor that T uses for their commuter rail.
So the pool is shrinking. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in specialized transportation professionals. And then, but even then, I mean, laborers, customer service folks, I mean, it is a struggle. It is a struggle to get people. And they just don't have an answer for it. Because we have to just kind of wait to see how the economy shakes out.
Yeah.
How not just government, but not-for-profit and private sector keeps trying to adjust to the current market. And I don't have an answer. I think the labor shortage is going to continue for a while, to be honest with you.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's going to be a couple of years at least, I think, before things start to even out a bit.
No, I agree. And it's, like I said, it's a national issue. And I don't blame people for it by trying to get the best dollar they can. I mean, it's the American way. I mean, people are going to work for the best dollar they can find.
Senator Warren was in your district this week, Tacky.
Yeah, Senator John Keenan, I met Senator Warren at the Yawkey Housing, Father Bill's Mainstream's facility, which will hopefully open in October. They're still in the midst of the tail end of the construction. That will be a multi-use services for individuals that are seeking assistance in housing, especially issues regarding homelessness. And it's a wonderful work by a whole lot of folks, and I give a lot of credit to Yaz and his team over there, as well as the city and the state and the feds, as well as a ton of private donors to make this happen. And, there's a huge cooperation by a lot of folks. And the reason I'm very excited about this building is that it's a one-stop shopping and helping people transition from homelessness into the greater society. There is a stigma for people being homeless. It's real. Some of these folks, maybe ex-convicts, another stigma. And some people are trying to recover from substance abuse, perhaps, and also stigma there too. So, I think it's a wonderful idea to have everybody get program assistance and transitional assistance, to what they need to do to obviously move out of Father Bill's and move into society, and have the independent life that they would like to achieve. Obviously, making one's goals is a big part of that, and Father Bill's trying to help people doing that. So it's wonderful seeing Liz Warren come down and make a personal tour and visit and talk about how important these investments are in our community. And obviously, it's a regional service. Father Bill's next big shop is in Brockton, which they're actually taking an armory. We saw the preliminary sketches, designs for that, to provide a similar facility down there. And there's a novelty. I think this is the first program of this type in the state to provide one-stop shopping essentially on helping people transition from homelessness, to wherever they're trying to get to next. And it's a savings in a big picture because a lot of stuff's taken care of there in many ways in terms of helping people move along to get where they want to go and better prepared to do whatever they want to do next. And that's kind of the big thing.
Yeah, it really is serving as a model, I think, not only for the state, but probably the country too.
Absolutely, because I think we all too often think of homeless situations, well, we'll get you someplace to sleep and then you figure it out.
Right.
That doesn't work. It doesn't. You really
No, it's an emergency Band-Aid. It doesn't address the root cause of homelessness. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need some type of transitional assistance. And I use that word a lot, transitional, because that's what it is. You're trying to help people from one situation to a better situation, but the person involved needs to be a participant, obviously, to help decide where they want to go, and then people need to help you where you want to go. And I always tell folks, my office, I get constituent services. The vast majority of first-time callers. Very rarely do I get someone that's a multiple call issue. The vast majority of one, we actually help them along with whatever they need to do, and I don't hear from them again. We log it into a database system as assisted, and then we close the file when the person's helped. So, this is wonderful. Me and Father Bill's folks been talking about this for many, many years, and it's great to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, the only sad part is Father Bill's not here to see it.
I know. He would have been very proud of the continuation of good work, at a new level, and most importantly, a creative new level. Mm-hmm. And again, an alternative way of doing things that people have not thought about, 20, 30, 40 years ago, a way of doing things.
Yeah. So, ironically, he had a vision for this way back in the early 80s, because the first thing he used to say was, I want to take the sign down.
Yeah, the goal of human services is to no longer be relevant. It's the only thing you can think of is it's where you want to basically fade yourself out of existence because to help the societies reach a stage.
Right, because the problem no longer exists, right? So it's a bold goal for sure. So this is nice to see a step in that direction. Let's end on a positive note, Techie. It's August, so that means August Moon.
August Moon's the 20th. You can find me there, my paper fans and jar openers again, and getting a sunburn. And avoiding the dunk tank at all costs. I don't want to go in there. And obviously I meet constituents, and I do constituent services at the table. Big surprise, right? Unless there's some kind of crises, you will see me there 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Quincy High School. Persuasion Resources, working with the high school in the city, does an incredible job, as well as the YMCA. We use their parking lot over there too. So, a lot of community partners make this event happen. It is the largest event in August on the South Shore, in my opinion. It's definitely, one of the biggest Asian run events in the state. The next bigger one is the Water Festival in Lowell, which is actually the 19th. So Saturday before August Moon, Quincy's the Water Festival. So people want to check that out. If you want to spend a day, I've gone up there. It is a lot of people. I visited.
I've even heard of that. Interesting.
Yeah. It's run by the Cambodian folks up there. It's a Southeast Asian event. So, very exciting. If you want to, if you're up in the area, make the trek down. But I'm warning you now, it is super crowded up there.
Okay. All right.
I've done the trek. But Quincy, in many ways, is somewhat easier. The parking is a little bit easier. We have public transportation. The road configuration is not new. During Flag Day Parade, we all know Quincy High School, Cottington Street is closed for Flag Day, so that configuration is not new for the city in terms of how to manage it. And it's again, it's a walk in, walk out, and it's an inner city, it's an inside the city event. So there's a lot of positives to having where it is.
And so just a lot of fun, it really is.
It is. I don't see it all. Passing to fans and job openers and taking constituent services. So
It's a working festival for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you're all gonna have a good time, and I will have a good time as well. I just have a different style of good time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's election
Uh,
season, so we'll see the candidates out, and
yep,
I'm
that's
hoping
right.
perhaps some of the statewide sitting officials will make a trip down in a non-election year. But as I just described, there's one and many other events going on in August, and I can always hope that one of the statewides come visit. But I'm understanding there's a lot of things happening at the same time, and it's August, and everyone wants a little time off.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of schools I know go back to last week in August, not Quincy, obviously, but other communities.
Well, remember my college days, I didn't realize that when I think everyone found this at one point. You get out of high school, you go to college, you didn't realize college actually started like 2 weeks before Labor Day.
That's right.
And then I did
So
the
what
same thing.
what did I get myself into? Of course, you have most of the month of January off. So what the heck?
Yeah, I remember that. Like, oh yeah, this isn't the schedule I'm used to. Same thing in law school. Right? Law school was actually before Labor Day for me in New England, going nights. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, this truncated summer because when you go to law school nights, the legislative session, as you all discovered, ends on July 31st.
Yeah.
But year you got the 1 month recess. So you're going to law school at night. You would run straight to August 1st. Okay, session ends, you're doing cleanup, but then you're going to school in 3 weeks. So I had like this really tiny window to try to do something else, anything else between me doing it because I used to run some of these August Moon festivals too. So I was trying to like sandwich in like school session close and like a festival, and it was like this 3 weeks of August that I'm desperately trying to find 5 days off.
Right.
In some ways, I still haven't left that lifestyle
Yeah.
from my law school days, and this year is actually my 20th anniversary from law school. 2003 was my graduation year, so I'll be an attorney this winter. 20 years. Wow, time flies.
Indeed. Yeah. Here's what we ask you to give out your contact information.
Sure, 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370 is the phone number. We are staffed. Tacky.chan at mahouse.gov, tacky.chan at mahouse.gov is the email. I'm still taking a lot of testimony, so I will find your email eventually, as I've got sifting through a few hundred emails in like half a day. And the second half is a few hundred more. State Representative Tacky Chan, Facebook. You can see pictures of where I've been, and hopefully, you enjoy them. MAlegislature.gov is the state website. All the public hearings are no longer on my Facebook account. They're sitting on the state website. They are archived. You're welcome to see me say God knows what next in a public forum. TackyChan.org. I've noticed people use that. Thank you. People obviously hitting the website and sending in their constituent requests through the website. So that's great to see. And we'll continue to update that. We had some interns did some incredible work and actually on that in the House Caucus website. And thank you for some great work and interns this summer. And at Tacky Chan is my Twitter, or X, I'm sorry. He changed the name. So it's X. Yeah. So at Tacky Chan on X.
Okay. Thank goodness we have young people to deal with these things.
I'm not that young anymore, folks. And yeah, I'm not on Reels. I'm not on Instagram. We have enough challenges with the current social media we have, and whatever's happening at X. So
that's right. Stay tuned for Y and Z coming up next.
yeah, I just don't know what else to say about that one. I'm on X. My handle.
All I could think of was, remember when Prince had just the symbol for his name?
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was wild. Because I don't know if you could even enunciate that symbol. I had no clue. I mean, I get it. It was funky. It was creative. There's an artist to it. It got attention. But that didn't last too long either.
No, because you can't sell it.
You couldn't sell it. It just wasn't a good marketing thing.
Right.
And I don't know how. And I don't think he legally changed his name. I think it was just a stage name because I don't know how you get paid.
Well, right. Yeah. What do you write the check out to?
Well, yeah, I mean, back in the days when we had paper checks, you know,
Right.
in the old days, we still had paper checks, right? I mean, where he draw this funky symbol somehow on this check. Obviously, I don't think he changed his legal name. I think it was already a stage name change. But yeah, I remember that. That didn't catch on. They just
No.
no.
Yeah.
Now we're dating ourselves.
Oh, I gladly embrace my age.
I'm starting to feel it now too.
Thanks a lot, Tacky.
Take care. Talk to you soon.